Hello, and welcome back to Bad Lit Friends, the writing podcast that barely knows what it's doing. I'm Kirk Rafferty, and this is my co-host.
I am Meagan Thompson-Mann.
And this is episode 3. We've been doing this for 3 weeks, Meagan.
Oh my God. We are totally delusional. Good for us.
Yeah, we still don't know what we're doing. In fact, we may know less.
Absolutely. Well, I thought first we could catch up on what we've been doing in our own writing journeys. So I'm going to bother you about book 3 again.
So last time I had written 1,100 words of book 3. I have written a total of 1,100 words for book 3.
Well done. Well done. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have thought about it a lot, though, and that counts.
It absolutely counts as writing.
Yes.
This is well known. If you are thinking about writing, you are writing.
There ought to be a think count, like a word count. There should be a think count. Like I have 1,100 thinks today.
Well done.
Which is pretty good. Yeah.
Just tot them down. It's all good.
And how about you?
So I finished my midpoint chapter. It was the first spicy work that I have ever written in my life. Wow, this is hard to write and to not feel like you want to climb out of your skin. I know that there are people who enjoy writing this stuff. I can't say that I am, but I needed it to move the plot along. I also had this week my writing circle. We actually read the spicy scene live in the writing circle.
Oh my God. Yeah.
They had not read it yet because I had given them 3 chapters to read. Both of the women who were present. Hello, Rebecca and Anne. I know you're listening. They read it live with me. They both really enjoyed it and said it worked and said it wasn't completely awkward.
All right. Yeah. Congratulations. That's amazing. One of the fun things that Meagan and I like to do is find spicy writing, like in a book excerpt or something like that, and just titter. And usually it's written by a man, right?
When it's done right, it really kind of hits you. You can have a total physical reaction, not even just like, ooh, I'm feeling tingly, but just like, wow, that is out of nowhere. It changes pacing. It changes dynamics. And for me, as a writer, getting outside of my comfort zone was something I absolutely had to do. And now it's a thing that I've done. So if I have to, again, I can do it. I don't think I want to do it, but I can.
I have avoided sexy time scenes in both of my first 2 novels. And if you remember back, I think it was episode 1, we were talking about novels that we had not finished. One of those that I did put aside, it was coming up to a sexy time scene.
I remember.
And I was dreading it, right? I was like, I don't know how I'm going to pull this off, because just fading to black really would not serve the story well. Like there just had to be like a little bit of a sexy time scene. I was like, man, this is...
Yeah.
Fortunately, I've dodged that bullet, but that bullet is going to eventually come back around when I do wind up finishing that book. So I'll have to buy your book and take notes.
Absolutely. Yeah. The other thing that has happened today is that I have come up with an idea for book 5, having not written the second half of book 2 or any of books 3 or 4, but I have an idea.
You're just a regular George Lucas, aren't you?
Pretty much. Slightly smaller beard.
You shared your synopsis with me, and I think it's a good story. So I'll be eager to see how that's going.
Shane is my fiance, and he said that he thought it would make an excellent Lifetime movie, which is high praise.
High praise indeed.
So we thought that this week we would like to talk about Reddit, but specifically about the subreddit PubTips, which Kirk introduced me to when he found out that I was also writing something. And he said, well, when you're ready to start looking for an agent, this is where you need to go. I am a Redditor. I've been a Redditor for, God, I don't know, probably about 10 years now. And I had never come across it, but it is an absolute font of knowledge. But there are recurring issues that keep coming up. What's your experience of PubTips?
If you think that we are going to drag PubTips, you're absolutely wrong. It was an amazing resource for me when I started querying. There are some fantastic people on there. There's some very knowledgeable people on there. There are people that are really willing to spend a lot of time with an author who posts on there and says, like, here's my query letter, here's my synopsis, or here's my first chapter, or whatever. And people give so much. It is an amazing resource. And if you are at some stage of querying, I would would highly recommend if you're not in there, get in there. It's always hard to put yourself out there. It's hard to hear criticism. Most of the criticism that you're going to get on PubTips, even if it's not criticism, say I would agree with, or even if, you are the poster and you don't agree with it, it's usually going to be very polite, very professional. There are some people out there, of course, they're going to be less polished in their feedback, right? A lot of times it's still pretty good feedback. It's just somebody's kind of propping themselves up, kind of being a dick, but
it's the internet.
It absolutely is. So when you're posting these materials, you're going to get feedback on it. There's some back and forth on it. And what I would say to people is take that advice and either use it or don't use it, or this is the same thing that you will get in a critique circle, or if you go to a conference at a workshop, right? Same rules apply here. Accept what works, discard what doesn't. But the last thing you want to do is start arguing. That doesn't do any good. You and I have seen some really interesting cases that have come up. Do you want to talk about some that have stuck out to you?
Yeah, so, there are recurring things, and we're all our special star children. One of the ones that you see over and over and over again is word count. You'll see a query letter come in and you have to put in what your word count is as part of the post. There are definite word counts for different markets. So when people come in with their babies that they're presenting to the world, like here's my baby swaddled up tight, and it's 150,000 word romance novel that is outside industry norms, there can be some real friction between people who have experience and people who are, for better or worse, noobs. Just so if you're not familiar with what the rules are about word count, sci-fi fantasy, 90 to 120,000 words. Debuts can be about 100,000 words. Young adults, about 60 to 85, maybe 90. Middle grades, much shorter, 35 to 55,000. Romance novels, about 70 to 90,000. Thrillers, mysteries, 70 to 90 as well. And upmarket or literary fiction, about 75 to 90. And all of these are kind of wiggly. So I'm not the voice of God here. This is just what I keep seeing again and again and again.
I want to touch on a term that you hit a little bit earlier, debut novel. If you are querying for an agent, there's about a 99% chance that you are a debut author, right? So you have not published yet. There are some people out there that were represented and then, had to go back to querying for whatever reason. So I don't know how that actually applies to word count. But for the vast majority of people out there querying, you are looking to be a debut novelist. Publishers will not take a chance on a debut novelist with a high word count. The excuse I hear a lot is, this is the story. My thriller has to be 150,000 words. I've compressed it as much as I possibly can. That's great, but you will not find an agent. You're just wrong that it cannot be cut down, because 150,000 words is a lot for an established author. So, maybe Stephen King can get away with 150,000 words. You cannot. If that book truly, truly cannot be compressed, write a different book then.
Do you want to explain why these ranges exist? It's not just like, oh, the publishers are dicking around with us, or agents are mean, or, those could also be true, but those aren't the reasons why, are they?
The fact of it is that paper costs money. There are audience expectations. Fantasy and science fiction readers tend to want more world building, and the stories require more world building. Those word counts are going to be a little bit higher. So if you are querying a fantasy, querying a sci-fi, and you're hitting up into 100,000, you're probably okay. If you are writing a thriller that takes place in 2025, we know the world that we live in. There's not that much world building required. Obviously, you want enough world building around your characters and things like that. Maybe your story takes place in Appalachia. That's a different world than a lot of people, us city folks, know about. But still, you're not building a world like Tolkien. So there are story reasons, but there's publishing reasons. I mentioned paper is expensive.
It's only going to get worse, I think, now with tariffs in the US at least. And we don't make enough paper here to supply all the paper that we need to print all of these books. Yeah. And there are so many books that are getting printed these days. This is just my hot take here, is that we're going to see shorter books getting picked up more, I think.
Could very well happen, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and quite frankly, too, in a bookstore, shelf space is limited. The store owner can only put so many books in their store. And if your word count is high, that means, bigger books. And I'll tell you this, doesn't even matter what the reasons are. There are established word counts. If you're a debut author, you must adhere to those word counts. Once you become established, people are waiting for your next release, then you can start surpassing those word counts. But as a debut author, you can't.
Kirk gave me real talk when I finished my first draft and I knew it was very long. He told me that I needed to cut it down. And I thought, how can I do this?
Yeah, what was your word count?
My word count was 144,000 words.
For a what genre?
Upmarket contemporary fiction, and I cut close to 60,000 words from this. As this old song goes, the first cut is the deepest, but it's kind of amazing how shallow the rest of them came.
When you started that journey to cut your novel down, I think I heard the words out of you too. I don't know where I'm going to cut. Like, I don't know what I can get rid of, right? But you found it. And that's why whenever I read PubTips and I see somebody say your word count's too high, and then the response from the author is, I've cut everything I can cut, I don't believe you. Yeah. I just don't.
I don't believe you either. I'm currently at 87,000 words. I'm about to undertake a revision of the book, and I feel good that I have about 3,000 words to work with, but I think I'm going to be cutting more before I start adding back. I'll probably end up around 87,000 words again. The story right now fits 87,000 words. I didn't actually lose any of the plot. What I lost was backstory, primarily, a little bit of establishing friendships and relationships between the main character and supporting characters. But you know what? It doesn't need it. I realize I wrote those things for myself. I have cut 3 entire chapters, not just sections. It is totally possible to do these things.
Yeah, there are strategies too. You don't have to just go in willy-nilly and start cutting things out. There are strategies to this. You cut a lot more than I did. I think my book got up to 110,000 and I cut it down to 90. So I cut about 20,000. I think my job was actually easier than yours. I really found just a lot of fat that I could just trim pretty easily. I tend to kind of meander when I'm writing. God, I just got this. Rylan, I'm going to pick on you again. Rylan is our producer. Rylan just gave me some feedback on a chapter of mine that the chapter drags, because I love when a character is just walking through the woods and thinking their own thoughts and having a little flashback to things. Those are the kind of things that are pretty easy to cut. I do that a lot. So when I cut my first novel, I found a lot of that type of stuff to cut. But there are things like, are all of your subplots really necessary? Could you get rid of a subplot? What was your strategy?
So it helps to explain where I was when I chopped the first chapter, which was I was at the Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers Conference in Denver, which I will be attending again next month with Kirk and Rylan. I was sitting in a session about editing and being bold in editing. The whole point of writing a novel is to move the plot forward. What's in your book that isn't moving the plot forward? And I had my manuscript open in my laptop on my lap, and I said, yeah, that was all a flashback. It can go bye-bye. And then I deleted the chapter and there was 3,500 words gone. Just poof. And I thought, what have I done? I have just cut 3,500 words. And that was okay.
And it's hard to do.
It's really hard to do. But then I did another one that weekend too. So I left that conference about 7,000 words lighter and emboldened to just keep cutting.
Yeah.
It started with the big cuts, and then the cuts got smaller, sections of chapters, paragraphs. Then when I got down to line editing, it was sentences, words, shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And it became easier and easier because I was further and further away. Your first book is your baby. It can feel really emotional making that first cut. But once it was done, it was done. And I knew I could do it. So just keep doing it, because ultimately, and this is something we talked about last week, you want other people to read your book. And how are you going to get that book out if people don't want to buy it?
Yeah. The whole time they're reading your book, you as an author are I don't want to say fighting, but I'm going to say it. You're fighting to keep their attention. As soon as your book starts to drag, there's a real possibility that they will put that book down. And that's what you don't want. That's another strategy that you can use is tighten up your pacing. If you've got a
Mhm.
scene where two characters are just kind of moseying through the woods, there's going to be a lot there that you can probably tighten up and make
Yeah.
something interesting happen.
I have a lot of characters who have fairly genial arguments with each other that could be compressed into about one back and forth, two back and forths. This is a super simplification, but no, you aren't. Yes, I am. No, you aren't. Yes, I am for,
Yeah,
an
yeah.
entire page, but it doesn't serve anything. And because my critique partners like my writing, they're like, oh, but it's really entertaining because I really like your writing. That's great. I don't care. Does it serve the plot?
There's two things that have to happen with dialogue. There's probably more things. There's two things that come to mind, though. One is serving the plot, just like you say. Like whatever conversation is happening, it's got to serve the story. The second thing is it has to sound natural. A lot of authors have, a tendency I have, is to, do exposition. So I'm going to move the plot along, as you know, Bob, that type of stuff. So you really want your dialogue to sound real, not forced, not pushing your plot. But Stephen King, love him or hate him, I know he's very, very divisive, writes amazing dialogue. And if you
Yes.
want a course in dialogue, pick up a Stephen King book. You don't even have to read it. Like, just find the parts where there's dialogue and see how he moves the story along with dialogue.
Absolutely true. And dialogue does so much for character development as well. If you are able to tell who these characters are without any speech tags at all, Abby said, Ben said, whatever, then you're
Yeah.
doing it right. You're differentiating your characters and you're serving their character development. Dialogue is super hard, but it's a skill that can be learned. It just requires a little bit of dedication and a little bit of reading. I didn't cut as much dialogue as I cut exposition and scene setting. My dialogue tends to be about 25 to 28% when I run statistics on it. I don't want it to be any lower than 25%. I actually think it could be closer to 30. I try to preserve that and see what else I can do. That's just something that I do.
Yeah. If you're looking to cut word count, go back to what a beta reader has said, or your writing partner, or your mom, or whoever has said. This part tends to sag a little bit, and that's probably a great opportunity to either completely cut or just tighten up or
Tighten up.
something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing when you start cutting. Kirk was the one who told me that he's an absolute mentalist because he actually enjoys editing more than writing. But I have
Yeah.
learned you're a total sicko. I've learned to stop hating it so much as I did before.
I don't enjoy writing that much. I find it very hard and tend to plod my way through it. I love editing though, because you can't edit a blank page, right? By the time you get to editing, it's like, I've got all these words. Now I can actually do something with them. Whereas, writing, it's like, oh, look, another blank page I have to fill out. Yeah.
Totally perverted, but that's okay. That's what
Yeah.
our audience is here for.
Let's
So,
talk comps.
yeah, let's talk comps. Everybody's favorite topic.
So this is something else that comes up in PubTips a lot is comps. Comps are hard, right?
Comps are very hard. Comps exist to help agents kind of get an idea of where you are as a writer, what your book would nestle up against in a bookstore.
Yeah.
That's the simple way of thinking about comps.
At some point, we're going to do a query package episode because
Yeah.
I love talking about querying, and comps are, of course, part of querying. My take on comps then is it gives the agent a little bit of a glimpse of some of the vibes of your book, but it also tells the agent how well read you are in your genre.
Exactly.
So I haven't seen this come up in PubTips a lot recently. I used to see it more, but somebody will say, great comp, but it's 12 years old. So your comps should be within the last 3 to 5 years. I
Yeah.
would say stay within 3. And the simple reason is the agent wants to know that you are not only well read in your genre, but you are current in your genre. If you have written a fantasy and your comp is Lord of the Rings, there are several problems with that.
Yeah, and that's a good point. You don't want blockbusters. No Lord of the Rings, no Harry Potter. And the reason why those are a no-go is because it says everything about your genre or your subgenre, but it
Yeah.
says nothing about your particular book. And one of the things that I think that a lot of authors kind of get wrapped up in is like, I can't find the exact comp. Like if you're thinking about comps not as perfect matches, topic matches, which is where I was when I started thinking about comps, but think about it more as vibes, pacing, voice, emotional promise that your book is making, it actually becomes a little bit easier because you can throw the net a little bit wider than just, these are exactly like my books. I couldn't find anything that was exactly like my book, which when I was first starting scared the shit out of me. But then I started realizing, okay, if I saw my book on a display table at Barnes and Noble, what would it be next to? And I found my comps. And I'm a good little writer. So I did actually read my comps.
I actually read my comps too. I enjoyed my comps. I'm glad I read my
Me
comps.
too.
You know, it's really funny. I had this notion in my head that I had better read my comps because, like, there's going to be a test, right? Like, if I'm sitting in front of an agent who's about to offer me rep, like, they're going to ask me questions about this book, right? I don't think agents do that. My agent didn't do that. I don't think you will ever run into that. If you don't read your comps, it's at least a good idea to be familiar with them. You also want to stay away from blockbusters. If my comp is for my romantasy is A Court of Thorns and Roses, everybody has read this book. You are saying nothing original about your book. You want to be a big fish in a little pond and you have just taken your little fish and thrown it into the ocean. It's not going to work that way. There are actual practical reasons for this too. If I'm writing a certain genre and if my comp is a book that everybody knows, I guarantee many people who are querying in your genre are going to have that comp too. And so what you've done is you have just made your query mid. Your query is not anything special at all. Whereas if you've got a comp that is not quite as well known, but did okay, there's a really good chance that the agent, because most agents are very well read, there's a really good chance that the agent has read that book and they're not seeing it in their slush pile a lot, and it might just click for them.
Yeah, because you want your book to stand out. You want your book to be the one that grabs an agent's eye or an editor's eye. It's such an interesting balance. You want to be somebody who is clearly within a genre so you can sell yourself, but at the same time, you need to be just that little bit different. Manic pixie dream book, right?
Yes.
So my three comps for my first book are Sandwich, The Paper Palace, and The Wedding People. These are all upmarket fiction. They all feature women in their 40s and maybe early 50s. There's a lot of emotional stakes going on, family tensions, problematic relationships, dealing with small problems, but big emotions. It took me a while to get there, but I like all of them. And I have found other writers now online who comp some of these. And when we see each other, we're like, hey, okay, I want to read your thing. Because we know thematically we're working in the same area. And that piques our interest because that's the stuff we want to read too.
Right.
A good comp will pique interest. It's not just a box ticking exercise.
And your comp doesn't have to line up with your book, right? It rarely will. If your book is lining up really well with your comp, you might have accidentally rewritten a book that somebody else has written, right? Yeah. What you are looking for, does your book have enemies to lovers? Great. This one in the same genre also has enemies to lovers. That's a comp. They can be completely different.
I have seen pushback in parts of threads where a commenter has said, I'm going to be totally honest with you, your comps suck. From reading your query, I don't see where these comps fit. I don't see how they match up thematically. You're querying a young adult novel, but those books are middle grade or those books are adult books.
God, you have to comp in your genre.
You have to comp in your genre. And especially when it comes to age ranges, it can just throw things off. And you have to be open to taking criticism about your comps. I see people saying, well, no, I like my comps, or I just can't find anything. No, you will find something. You just haven't actually finished the hunt. Actually, doing the hunt can be fun because you're hopefully going to find books that you actually want to read.
Yeah. I had the same problem everybody else has. Like, my book is so snowflake special that there are no comps out there that even remotely describe my book. I had a very difficult time coming up with comps. I think I finally did, and I had some really good comps. My favorite comp was First Cosmic Velocity by Zach Powers. I don't understand why it's not a bigger book than it is, but it worked really well for a comp for me. That comp is what grabbed her attention. She's not only familiar with that book, she knows the author.
Ah.
Like socializes with the author. That was a very lucky thing. Now my book maybe could have stood on its own and everything still could have worked out. But I have to say, like, don't dismiss comps, because my comp literally grabbed my agent's attention. A strategy to finding a good comp is go to Goodreads. Maybe you've got an idea of a comp, but it's too old. A Court of Thorns. ACOTAR. Unfortunately, it was published in 2015, I think. So it's not a good comp. So go to Goodreads, pull up ACOTAR, and then down at the bottom, it's going to have related books, and start going through those, and then just kind of tree out from there. There will be like 5 or 6 of them that they recommend. Start going through it. Do any of those work? Okay, well, pull that book up and then look at what those are recommended. And eventually, hopefully, you'll be able to find 3.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's also a perennial question in PubTips about, do comps have to be books? And there's definitely a split of opinion on this, where some people say, no, they've got to be books. They have to be books.
Yeah.
But sometimes there are movies, television shows, there are plays. I am open to this idea of it. I'm not a purist about it.
Sure.
But I think if you are going to do this, you need to stick the landing on this one, because it's going to ask an agent to make a little stretch of the imagination to consider something that is not necessarily printed and may have very different pacing, very different conventions. So if you're going to do it, be confident in what you're doing and don't just say, I guess that fits.
Yeah.
You shouldn't do that anyway with comps, but there can be a little bit more fudging, I think. If you've got a book, you're like, hey, these are books. I'm making a book. Here's another book. If you're going to go out there and say, a good comp here is Succession. And if it is, wonderful. But don't do it because you're not willing to put the legwork in to do something else. It needs to be right.
There's a lot of different diverse opinions on PubTips about that. I'll give you mine. If you're going to comp a movie or a TV show, other media, I really believe you need 2 literary comps at an absolute minimum. You are selling a book, right? It's going to sit next to other books. The weight has to be on the book's shoulders. And so I think that I am going to plant my flag on this hill that you must have at least 2 literary comps. Now, maybe you have 2 movie comps. So my litmus would be, if I'm thinking about comping a movie or TV show, is my book cinematic? And by that, I don't mean, would my book make a great TV or movie adaptation? Because we all think that our books would make great movie adaptation.
Kirk, how many times have we both come up with ideal cast lists for our book?
Oh, yeah. Anya Taylor-Joy plays both of my leads in both of my books. So anyway, the question is, though, is the book itself cinematic enough that it makes sense to comp something cinematic? That's really the question that you have to ask. I'm not a huge fan of comping non-books, but I see it too. And I've seen some query letters that actually the TV show comp or the movie comp was like perfect. I would say like lean towards literary comps, but if the TV show just makes a lot of sense, go ahead and throw it in there. But again, agents are really looking for those literary comps.
And I think as well, the same sorts of rules about how old these comps are also apply. Like, don't comp Sunset Boulevard. Fantastic movie. It's getting a re-release, actually.
Well, hey, if it's a re-release, then, maybe that's valid comp, right?
Oh, yeah. So one last topic here. Personalizing your queries. There are all sorts of
very
different
strong
takes.
Opinions on that, but go ahead.
Yes. So if you spend any time looking at interviews with agents online, you will see, I don't care if my query is personalized. If you misspell my name, it's really your query. What is your book about? I don't know that I trust them. I know you and I are slightly different. I like to add a bit of personalization. It's not super duper deep, but it is, hey, I got your name right. I see that you represent authors in the area that I'm trying to write in. I'm not stalking them online and going, oh, hey, I see that you went to college in the same state that I went to college in about 20 years after I did. So we have something in common. I'm not doing that. But there are definite takes on PubTips about this. What I see more frequently than not is that you should try to do a little bit of personalization. There are people who push back up against that, like, oh, it's exhausting. Oh, it's just one more box I have to tick. Why are these agents so mean? There are definitely ways to do this that are good, and there are definitely ways to do this that make you look like someone who has not done their homework. And that's not just like you put the wrong name down, because things like that happens all the time. And I believe agents when they say it happens. It doesn't matter, especially when you're going to Query Manager and you're having it repopulate things. You might miss something. That's not a big thing. I think a big problem would be something stalkerish.
Yeah. Don't be weird. So I'm going to plant another flag. I don't think personalization matters. I'm sure there are agents who enjoy seeing, oh, we have this thing in common or whatever. I'm sure there's agents out there that do that. But what are you really doing here? You're selling your book. Mm-hmm. You have a very limited number of words on your query letter. If you can fit some personalization in there, I guess. On the other hand, fewer words in your query letter makes it easier on the agent. And what does the agent want to see? They want to see your book. In fact, I've seen a lot of agents will even say they have built this routine. They look at a query letter and their eyes immediately go down to the meat of the query letter, right? That maybe they look at the genre, the word count, all the big things, the comps even. A lot of agents aren't even seeing your personalization really. I mean, they're focusing on other things. I have yet to hear a story of an agent that turned somebody down because there was not enough personalization in their query. It's like, the book was great. The book was fabulous. It's exactly what I want. But that didn't seem like I had anything in common. I have never heard that. You've got a section in your query letter for your bio if you really want to pique their interest. So my firmly planted flag is, unless you've got a really strong personalization hook, and I'm racking my brain trying to think of what something like that would be. Just pitch the book.
If you connected with an agent, either through some sort of online pitch fest, which I'd love to talk about another time, or met someone at a conference, or
I met you at
out
the
in the
conference.
wild.
Yeah, that's actually a great personal hook. And yes, so forget everything I said if you met them at a conference, if you were on in a workshop or something like that. Something that does connect you, because agents do actually sometimes, wrong or right, they will prioritize somebody that they met at a conference.
Yeah. The time that I queried an agent who shall remain nameless, when I left a college reunion event after 3 glasses of wine because Kirk dared me, I submitted a query when I was a little drunk, and I slightly personalized, but not very much, my query letter, and I got a full request in under 12 hours.
Yeah.
So you never know.
Big fan of drunk querying. Everybody should do it. No.
No. But it was a really great story to tell the next day at reunion. Our reunions are totally bananas, and they are 4 days long. And so I got to tell everyone at the reunion that I had gotten a request one night.
That is a fantastic
many
story.
of these people had seen me a little tipsy. So you don't necessarily have to do it. I think that if you can do it well, do it. Just don't be weird.
Yeah, and you do hear some agent stories. The big one you hear is they queried my personal email address, right?
Yes.
Like, don't do that.
Don't
Jesus,
do that. Don't do that. I get why agents are like that. So queries are definitely a topic that we are going to dig into in more detail in a later episode. We're going to move on to our Book World Drama Watch Hot Gossip. The topic I want to talk about is one that has really excited me for reasons that are, well, I think that they're actually pretty important. And we could talk about this in a lighthearted way, but I think there's also a deeper level to this.
I have more flag planting to do on this one.
There was a discussion, and it is continuing right now as we are recording this, about indie authors using editors. The question of, do you always need one? I spotted some people taking the position, if you cannot afford an editor, you need to wait to publish your book until you can afford one. There's an intersection of class, race, accessibility, disability, and just plain tone deafness that has come into this discussion that was like catnip for me. I am so down this rabbit hole. Editors are professionals and they should be paid, and they should be paid commensurate with their talents.
Mm-hmm.
Many editors will do deals with people, but deals aren't always enough. Some people just can't afford it, whether it's a long-term financial issue or just like, I just can't do it right now. There are other ways of editing your book. It doesn't require necessarily having a professional. Everybody should have at least one other set of eyes look at their manuscript. That is not a hot take. You need somebody who doesn't care about your book, but somebody who can grow to care about your book. So this can be your writing circle, your critique partners, your alpha readers, your beta readers, people that you trade your own talents with. There are so many ways of getting to an excellent finished product that you can be proud of. However, there are people out there who want to gatekeep. And one of the reasons why my understanding of it is, as somebody who is trying to tradpub, is that a lot of people who want to be indie authors don't want to have anything to do with the gatekeeping elements of traditional publishing.
Mm-hmm.
To have somebody come in and say, you need to do it this way, is just more gatekeeping. That makes me very, very uncomfortable, because there's always multiple ways of getting so many different types of things in life. Why can't editing be another way, especially if you have a community of writers around you to help you get to where you want to go?
Yeah. So for my first book, I hired a developmental editor. And you mentioned privilege, right? So I have a full-time job. It pays fairly well. I was in a position that I was able to pay for a developmental editor before I started querying my novels. I still had to go in and implement the editor's recommendations, right? So, I mean, it's still me writing the book, but I fully acknowledge that I was in a position that I was able to pay for that. There are people who are not in a position to pay for that. And the other thing I'll say is, at that point, it doesn't matter whether I was going trad pub or indie. I saw it a lot on Twitter. This idea that if you are going trad pub, you shouldn't get an editor because your agent is going to look at it and know that it's going to be something that will need to be edited. So why pay for it? They're going to inherently see your brilliance in it, I guess, or something. I thought it was an odd take, because my take was, I want to take every opportunity I can to submit the best manuscript I can to an agent, and so that's just an aside. So there are people that just cannot hire an editor for whatever reason, that they just can't do it. Should those people just indie publish or submit to an agent? Of course not. But you mentioned other eyes, right? Mm-hmm. You absolutely, and no matter what kind of position you're in, you've got to get some other eyes on that. And there are plenty of ways to do that. You have friends and family, who I think are probably the worst option.
Oh, 100%.
Because they love you, right? They don't want to make you sad. So of course they're going to tell you nice things. Conferences are also expensive, so that's not an option for everybody. But local writing groups. Mm-hmm. So my local writing group is Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers. There's also Pikes Peak Writers south of me. They have conferences, but they also have workshops. A lot of them are free workshops. They also have resources to where you can find writing circles. A lot of them are like Zoom writing circles. You don't even have to leave your house. So there are ways to get other eyeballs on your manuscript. And these are writers who are at some level in their writing, right? Or they're somewhere along their career path. Now you might get some bad takes, like always. But you know what? You might hire a bad editor too.
Yeah, there's no guarantee.
It goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. Take what feels right to you, discard what doesn't. There are ways to do this without having to spend money. The take that you must have an editor, first of all, is very simplistic as well, because there's all kinds of different types of editors, right?
Yes.
Copy editing and line editing, developmental editing. You should always get a developmental edit done before you do line editing, for example.
And I can speak as someone who did my own developmental editing. I taught myself how to do it. I read a whole bunch about how to do it, and I thought, okay, well, I have some experience as a writer. I'm a lawyer. I write every single day for my job.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
it requires oftentimes a lot of restructuring, moving things around, strengthening arguments, and thinking about my writing on both a macro and a micro level. So I felt confident because I had my own tools to be able to do this. I still have problems. And this is why I'm going back to doing it again. But the problems that I identified, I ran them past people that I trust before I started making these changes because I needed a second set of eyes on the changes that I'm going to make. I'm not
Yeah.
doing this alone. And then after I have it done, I'm going to give it back to my betas and say, let's do it again. And again, read the whole thing again. Tell me what you think. Does it work? Does it still work? Does it work better? Having another set of eyes always helps. And this goes back to what we were talking about the other episode about the importance of building your tribe
Mm-hmm.
as writers, because as you build this tribe, these are people whom you can trust, who, if you've built up a relationship with, you can ask them, hey, can you read this? Even if it's just a chapter, like, does this
Yeah.
work? These are free resources. Free is a wiggly word here, but there is capital that you need to build up in order to cash it in for these favors. But as well, you need to make yourself available for other people to be these second pair of eyes, third pair of eyes, fifth pair of eyes, whatever. There is an economy that doesn't necessarily involve having to spend money that you may or may not have. One of the really offensive things that I saw was that you just don't care if you're not hiring an editor. That is so classist, so elitist, and just speaks to being completely unaware of your own privilege. I am somebody who is completely honest about all of the privilege that I have in my life. I went to one of the top prep schools in the country, not to brag or anything, but and went to an Ivy
But
League
go ahead and
college.
brag.
Yeah, I went to an Ivy League college. I graduated from law school not once but twice because I am a masochist. But I am upper middle class. I own my own home. I speak English with no accent, but I am also very able to take criticism when I am acting like a hoity-toity bitch. I want to hear where other people are and take criticism and understand that my experience, and I do understand this, my experience is nothing like most people in America. One of the things that they taught me at one of my hoity-toity schools was that you are privileged, and what your role in the world is with that privilege is to go out and share it and to do good and help people who are not where you are to raise themselves up. So
Yeah.
shut up and sit down and listen to other people.
Well,
That's what I'm doing here. I don't like when people are gatekeeping and saying you have to do it this way. And particularly this thing that I really hated was that if you're putting a product out into the world that isn't perfect, that you're letting other authors down. I'm sorry, that is a wrong take.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, somebody else's crappy book has no bearing on my crappy book. Yeah. And this idea that if you're not hiring an editor, you must not care enough about your book. Like anybody who has ever finished a book, you're telling me they don't care? Like that book is their baby. I speak as somebody who has written a lot of garbage. That book may be garbage, but it's your garbage.
That's right.
It's your baby
Mhm.
garbage. And it has, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps energy, doesn't it?
It really does. It really, really does. That's not to say anything about, the politics of the people who were saying these things or the people agreeing with them. I'm sure many of them are perfectly, right on folks, but privilege can blind you. And especially when I think the most galling aspect of it for me was when I saw writers who said straight up, like, can't afford it. Can't afford it. Can't afford, the layaway plan that you're proposing for me. Just can't do it. And then explaining why, and then to have pushback to that pushback saying, well, you need to prioritize better. Some bootstraps nonsense. Like
Yeah,
if you just gave up your avocado toast, maybe you could
I know,
afford an
right?
editor. It's giving uber boomer energy here that I am very uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
And if someone is telling you this is where I am, you need to try and meet them there.
So, for anybody who is considering hiring an editor, or if you just want to kind of get an idea of what you would be paying an editor, there is an organization called the Editorial Freelancers Association. The web address is the-efa.org. They've got a menu, hire a freelancer. And if you drop that menu down, there's editorial rates. And you can actually plug in what kind of editing you're looking for. If this is your first edit, you're probably looking at a developmental edit. You can plug in the number of words and what you can expect to pay for an edit. It gives you a low, medium, and high range. And that's going to give you an idea of what an edit is actually going to set you back. And spoiler alert, it's not cheap. And what editors well know too is that you're actually getting a deal for any of those rates because a good editor really pours their heart and soul into it. That brings me to kind of part B, which is you need to check references. So you don't just like do an internet search on book editor and click on the first one, right? It's a good chunk of money that you're putting up. So you want to find an editor who's well recommended. You want to maybe even speak with some of their customers. If you find an editor who will not let you speak to their previous customers, like that's a red flag.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to give you a range of what you can expect so that you know now that if you find an editor who is charging way below that or way above that, also a red flag.
But one thing I'd like to say is thank you so much for providing that information for that website. That's really fantastic. And we're going to put it in the show notes for other people to access as well. So I didn't know about it, but it's something that I might have a look at.
See, I'm just full of surprises.
You are. There are editors who will work with people on rates. Isn't necessarily a hard and fast rule that what they say is what they charge. It could be, but it's worth finding out if it's something that you feel is right for you and it's something that you feel that you can afford or budget for. Everything that Kirk said about checking references absolutely applies. I have seen some horror stories online about people paying, only a couple of $100s. And then it's clear that this editor, there were definite square quotes around that one, had sent their manuscript through ChatGPT or Claude or God forbid Grok. Because did you give your permission to have your work fed into an LLM? Probably not. So, also look at the fine print. This is me with my lawyer hat on. If you're signing a contract, look at the fine print because you might have agreed for them to do something like that. If you're cool with that, that's fine. But you need to make sure what you're agreeing to have done. And that also works if you get into a dispute with the work that they've provided, that they haven't provided you with any product at the end, or that they've provided you with something substandard. Look at your contract because they may very well have broken it.
Yeah. There are also some people out there who have these combination editorial marketing package. I'm not saying that they are all scammy, that they're all bad, but man, I would really look hard at something like that. In my mind, the two things are very different. And I feel like there's a little bit of a conflict of interest for somebody who is both editing and marketing your book. Those make my teeth itch. I don't like them. If you're hiring an editor, hire an editor. If you're hiring a marketing person, hire a marketing person.
Yeah. And marketing is yet another topic for another time. I also have many hot takes about marketing. But to finish up in this area, look, it goes back to what I have to say as a semi-reformed internet troll. Don't be an asshole on the internet. Don't, if you are going to be it, either be completely resolute that you suck and own it and not backpedal and try and fix your problem and post through it. Do not do it, or don't suck.
Seems like all of our shows so far have boiled down to don't be an asshole. Just don't be an asshole.
It's a personal philosophy, but just try not to be a complete unrepentant jerk about positions like this and take on criticism, possibly about privilege and possibly about just understanding that not everybody is exactly where you are in your own writing journey, that we're all at different stages, and that many, but not all of them are valid. So
Yes.
that's me being a lawyer again. Sorry.
Does not constitute legal advice.
Correct. I am a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer. But what we were saying before, there are so many ways of approaching editing that involve using a professional editor, but also using your own talents, the talents of people that you trust. And it's such a great opportunity to connect with other writers and to give back to the community.
Yeah. Well said again.
Thank you. So it's been another episode. My God, 3.
This was a potpourri of discussion items.
Thank you for listening again to Bad Lit Friends. You can find us on all of the social media platforms that we like or tolerate. Bluesky, Instagram, Threads, not at the evil Blue Empire or the evil...
The one that used to be Twitter.
Yes, the artist formerly known as Twitter. We are not on there. We are now available on all or most major podcast platforms, including YouTube now. If you can like, subscribe, tell your aunt Frida about us, we'd appreciate it. Reviews are great. I finally figured out how to do a review on YouTube, but I'm not going to review my own podcast because even I am not that much of an egotist. And for next time, our topic will be comparison is the thief of joy, and resisting the siren pull of thinking about how other people are succeeding when you're not.
It's going to be a fantastic way to figure out how to wander off of that topic as well.
Absolutely. I mean, why else are you listening to us? Thank you again for listening to Bad Lit Friends, and we will see you next time.
Bye.